What is going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good day. It is the All Access Podcast, your home for sports in the Queen City and the Carolinas. My name is Bradley, joined today again, as usual, with Gray. Gray, how are you doing today?
Man, absolutely fantastic. Excited to be back on Thursday. I feel like we're starting to get a little rhythm established here, Bradley. We're going to hit our longer episodes maybe on Sunday, get into our deep talks. And then Thursday, maybe we just spit fire about some fun things that have been on our mind throughout the week. But man, I'm excited. I got some things on my mind. I know you do too.
Yeah, I'm all about that. I absolutely love the idea of just coming in here, man. Let's just, kind of rapid fire through a couple of things. There's some Panthers news we're going to get into here in just a little bit. Training camp's underway. They've gotten the pads on. We've seen, kind of how the defense reacts with the pads on. Offense, how they're looking. Sam Darnold's had a couple of really nice connections. So we'll get into all that before FanFest happens this weekend. But yeah, just kind of top of mind. Do you have any top stories that are happening right now? I mean, you don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but anything that's top of mind, most pressing thing for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, gosh, I feel like there's a lot going on in sports right now between all the free agencies and everything that's going on. I thought the Messi news today was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Seeing that he's going to move on from Barcelona. I'm a soccer head, and with Charlotte FC on the rise, we're gonna have to start talking about soccer on here a little bit, Bradley. I know you can bear it, man. I know you can.
Hey, if Messi comes to Charlotte, I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, Charlotte FC threw out the little DM tweet. Did you see that? They were like,
I
maybe
loved
we should
it.
slide into Messi's DM. So, that was funny. Me and the boys are talking about today, and we've got a little group message. We're always, talking about random stuff in sports, obviously, as it's coming up. And we were talking about the Messi thing and talking about him coming to the United States to play in the MLS, just, being goofballs or whatever. And one of our friends suggested he went to high school with us here in Wilmington, but he moved out to Houston, and he said Houston Dynamo, no income tax. Could be a big deal for Messi with his tax evasion stuff. We thought that was so funny, and so it got me on a little tangent at work, actually, which is probably the best thing. But it was lunch. I was eating lunch, and so it was fine. But I was sitting there, and I thought to myself, I wonder if Messi would even be able to fit into like a salary cap for an MLS team. Like, would they even have the capital to pay for a guy like that? And so I looked into it a little bit, and Messi makes $71 million per season for playing soccer right now for Barcelona. Now he doesn't, obviously, because he's going to be signing a new deal. But his previous contract, $71 million, one of the richest soccer players and athletes in the world. So, I mean, I suppose it's to be expected. But it got me thinking, could the Houston Dynamo even afford that? What do guys on the Houston Dynamo get paid? I found out that only two guys on the Houston Dynamo get paid over $1 million a season. And in total, every season the Houston Dynamo pay a little less than $7 million for their entire player roster per season in salary. So just to put that in perspective, like that's over $60 million more that Messi's getting paid than an entire soccer team in the United States. And you wonder why our guys aren't competing with these top dogs. It is hilarious. That was on my mind today, Bradley. I had to be honest about it.
I don't expect it. I don't think anyone really expects it, but I wouldn't count it out because people like Mike Trout that have these monster contracts, Bryce Harper, just these ridiculous baseball contracts are still making more than the entire Tampa Bay Rays roster. So I wouldn't count it out that somebody can just come in here, sign one of these mega deals, take home the bag, and then just freaking tear the league up. So I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. If you're in if you're in the chat, please let us know where you want us to take this discussion. We are always open to your thoughts. Join us in this conversation because we really do want to have a one-on-one discussion or a two-on-one, a one-on-one discussion with the chat and make sure that you stay involved. So we are live every Thursday and Sunday at 8 p.m. If you don't catch the live and you're watching it on replay, don't forget you can take us with you with iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your audio. We will be there. So if you've been following along on Twitter at All Access CLT, you've been seeing some things that I've been thinking.
And some bold things, Bradley.
I've been making some bold predictions. And I'm not one that normally comes out here and says, you know what? I'm feeling bold. I'm usually cautiously optimistic. Don't get me wrong. I've never been one to say, "Oh, Panthers are going 17-0." When they went 15-1, I was never saying, "Yeah, they're going to go 15-1." I'm always the reserved 8-8, 9-7. I think last year I said they were going to go 7-9 at best. Like if it was a dream come true, if they would have gone 7-9 last year. But I'm really excited this season because I genuinely think, and I genuinely believe.
You mean it.
I mean it. I think the Panthers could go 17-0.
Wow.
And wow. I'm not afraid to stand by that. I'm taking it to my grave right now. Carolina Panthers going 17-0. You can book it. They have the worst Vegas odds to win the NFC South. But they have
that's a bet I would take.
Yeah, I would.
That's a bet I would take.
I would absolutely take the bet that the Carolina Panthers can win the NFC South. Partly
but
because
you're taking it a large step further.
Oh, I didn't just like dip my toe into the pool. I jumped all the way in head first into this endeavor. I had a dream about it the other night. You can call me crazy if you want to. I don't care. The Lord spoke to me. He told me, Bradley, Carolina Panthers, led by Sam Darnold, are going to go 17-0 this season. And it's just going to be one of the most incredible things we've ever seen in sports.
So what about your dream? I have to ask, like, led you to this bold prediction?
So what led me to this in my dream is Sam Darnold throws 45 touchdowns.
Wow. That'd be a lot. That's 40, like MVP Sam Darnold.
He is MVP. Christian McCaffrey also wins Comeback Player of the Year. Brian Burns, Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah.
So triple header there.
A triple header. And I'm going to get into a little bit of this because the most important thing that plays into this is actually the schedule. It's not because they are going to have, granted 45 touchdowns is a lot, but they're not going to have like a perfect season. Like there's going to be some bumps in the road.
Well, I mean, 17-0 is a perfect season.
It is a perfect season, but there will be some mistakes. Like I think you alluded to it last week. There's going to be some bumps in the road. It's a very young team. They need some of these veterans. But we're going to break this down because, football is a game of quarters. And there's essentially 4 games a quarter in the past, 16 games, 4x4x4x4. 4 quarters of 4 games. The first 4 games of the season, they take on the New York Jets. They take on the New Orleans Saints without Drew Brees, without Michael Thomas, without Emmanuel Sanders, without Janoris Jenkins, without Jared Cook. That could be 2-0 with the now rookies feeling a little bit of confidence. You take on the Houston Texans. Lord knows what they have going on. They are so busted up that it doesn't matter who they put on the field. Carolina Panthers can take that, and they'll be starting the season 3-0. It gets a little tricky with the Dallas Cowboys in Game 4. Doesn't mean it can't happen. You don't know what you're going to get with Dak Prescott coming off that horrible injury. That defense, still not great. A very good offense, but we really think this Carolina Panthers defense can do it. I think that. Do you really think it would be that far-fetched for them to start out 4-0 with those 4 teams? You got the Jets, Saints,
not
Texans,
far-fetched. Not
Cowboys.
far-fetched. I think that with such a young group, a bump in the road early wouldn't surprise me, but I can give you 4-0. I can give you 4-0.
See, you can give me 4-0. 3-1 is honestly very doable for that.
That'd be a great start. I'd love a start like that. 3-1, 4-0. I'm gonna be a happy Panther fan at a quarter. The 4 ways games through the season there.
So with that, would you say the Cowboys are in a better position than the Philadelphia Eagles this season? Like the NFC East is going to be the Cowboys or the football team, correct?
Yes.
So week 5, they have the Philadelphia Eagles. If they beat the Cowboys, they obviously can beat the Eagles. We'll check that one off. That's another win. That's 5-0. Minnesota Vikings, doable for a victory with Kirk Cousins getting all sorts of pressure. This game's at home in Carolina. Kirk Cousins, an indoor team on the road at Carolina Panther Stadium, Bank of America Stadium. I'm chalking that up as a win. That's now 6-0. You get the New York Giants with Daniel Jones. Still don't know what you're going to get from that. David Gettleman's there. He's made all the wrong moves while he was here in Carolina. You're now 7-0 with on the verge of playing the Atlanta Falcons at 8-0. Atlanta Falcons, no Julio Jones. Does that offense scare you that much this year without Julio Jones? If it's
they picked up maybe the best young receiving prospect. I know he's a tight end, but I think you talk about pass catchers. I think Kyle Pitts might have been the best one in the entire draft.
I don't want to
So
hear it. I don't want to hear it. They're without
now Matt
Julio
Ryan
Jones.
has been struggling, and without Julio
Thank you.
Jones, all the eyes are going to be on a rookie. It's a tough transition, even for a rookie as talented as Kyle Pitts. So I can give you a Falcons win there. Yeah.
So even if the Carolina Panthers, which at the end of last season, the last half of the season, they were able to shut down a complete shutout against the Detroit Lions. They shut down Devontae Adams in the second half of that Green Bay game. They really turned the corner at the last half of last year. Going into this year, if that defense carries them for the first 8 games, now the offense starts to click. Sam Darnold starts to click. You get A.J. Boye back at this point. This team is shaping up to be very good at 8-0. The biggest worry is 9-0, 10-0, where they have the Patriots with Cam Newton and the Arizona Cardinals, which I think might be the best team in the league, besides the Carolina Panthers, obviously. Those 2 games are very worrisome for the road to 17-0, but right now we're just mapping it out. Cam Newton comes back for a homecoming. Too emotional. We saw it. He plays. He's a very emotional player. It's going to be too emotional for him. He's going to crack. Unfortunately, I'm a can stand for life. He's going to crack. Panthers 9-0 against the Patriots. Do you think it's possible so far? Are you starting to believe the 9-0 dream with me? Don't say no. You better.
You have helped me see how favorable of a schedule we do have. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's a very favorable schedule. The first 9 games of the season, I would not be shocked, because I truly believe the 9-0 at this point, but I would not be shocked if they were 5-3 through the first 8 games.
Sure.
6-2 through the first 8 games, going into that New England Patriots game with a young team that's very moldable, with opinions and thought process of, hey, we can actually do this. Like, we could be in this. We just got A.J. Boye back. That defense is going to fire up a little bit. Like, they're turning the corner. You take on Arizona Cardinals. It is at Arizona. They got a little bit better defensively by adding J.J. Watt. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's pretty good. He can probably move a fire truck by himself.
Yeah. That's a tough win all around for anybody in the league.
So it's a very worrisome game, but I'm hoping J.C. Horn by that point is a lockdown corner for DeAndre Hopkins. We're just going to double him up like they did Calvin Johnson when he was with the Detroit Lions.
Maybe Hassan comes out with a chip on his shoulder that game. You never know.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what. If the Panthers are going to do what you're saying, then the household names that are not going to be the only names making plays throughout this season. Because if you think back to 2015, which is the closest thing that we have to what you're talking about right now, I know names from that team that aren't big names now. And I knew them then because they were making plays. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Guys like Coney Ealy, for instance. Think about what a big presence he was on that team. And who's talking about Coney Ealy this season? Nobody. So for this team that you're talking about to do the things that you're suggesting they can do, which they can do, it's not just going to be Christian McCaffrey, Brian Burns, Sam Darnold, and the guys that you know. It'll be the guys that you don't know that step up to make the plays. So I think that's interesting. Maybe an Arizona game like that, Hassan Reddick comes in, maybe gets a couple sacks, gets a big fumble play. You never know. But that's what it's going to take to beat teams like Arizona to make the type of run that you're talking about.
Yeah. So hypothetically, they start 10-0. 9-0 I think is extremely doable. I think that 10th game against Seattle or the Arizona Cardinals, very difficult. Just to quickly go through the last 7 games of the season. Washington football team, which we don't know who their quarterback's going to be at this point. We know they have a good defensive line. Terry McLaurin. That's about it. Led by Ron Rivera. Great coach.
That's going to be a Ron Rivera vendetta game right there, but we'll see.
We'll see. Then you finish the season with the Dolphins, which we still don't know what exactly we're getting out of Tua Tagovailoa, because we saw his ups and downs. They moved on from Ryan Fitzpatrick, so they truly believe in him. But we're going to wrap it up with the Dolphins. Another game against the Falcons. And then the last 4 are the ones that scare me, because you have Buffalo, Buccaneers, Saints, which Jameis Winston might have it worked out again, and then the Bucs. So Bills, Bucs, Saints, Bucs. Those last 4 games will be extremely challenging. But my point is that I'm trying to get at is if this team, which I think is very possible to start out 7-0, I think these young players are going to start to believe that they can do it, and the older, more wily veterans that they've brought in can think, hey, I actually have a shot at the playoffs. Like, this could be my one chance. I got out of a lot of these guys came from other situations where they didn't have the opportunity to go to the playoffs very much. They weren't in shape to be going to a world championship or a Super Bowl. And now you have all these people that are really truly believing in themselves. I don't think 17-0 is far-fetched, man. It's going to be a perfect season. Darnold, MVP. Christian McCaffrey, comeback player of the year, because he will absolutely deserve that. And then Brian Burns, defensive player of the year. You can go ahead and lock it in right now, Gray. I am so hyped.
Hey, I mean, man, listen, if you're some kind of guru and you pulled that off, you're not going to get any complaints out of me. You're not going to get a single complaint out of me. No, sir.
There's nothing that scares me in those first 7 games. I understand.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what. You certainly sold me on the idea that the schedule's favorable, right?
Very favorable.
These are all teams that this team has a chance against. I could, like you said, pull out 4 or 5 that are going to be very challenging. It's going to take the best performance available to win. But it's a favorable schedule. What I think that's interesting with your discussion too, Bradley, is that I think you also inspire another deeper conversation. That is the importance of the first, let's call it 4 to 5 games of this season.
First quarter of the season.
Because this team is so young and they're so impressionable that if you let them know that they're good early on, they're going to be dangerous, right? I also think you can think about this season, though, and potentially set it up the opposite direction. I'll play devil's advocate for a second, because let's say you come out against a team like the Jets, a team that you're supposed to beat. Jets are in a full rebuild. They have a brand new quarterback. Nobody thinks their defense is worth anything. Their offensive line is a lot of question marks still. Mekhi Beckman, they draft Vera Tucker. Of course, they're going to get better, but there's a lot of question marks on that team still. They made a big effort. They overhauled the entire team, just like the Panthers did last year. Who's to say that the Jets can't come out under Salah, being the head coach now, and the new leadership of Zach Wilson, they've totally revamped that receiving core. Who knows, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, let's say our young team who knows that they've got a lot of talent, they know that they can be a good team, come into that game and lose at home to the Jets week 1. Does it? I guess it's more of a question. Does it deflate them? Do they take that?
Devastating.
Do they take that as a young, impressionable team and say, "Wow, we thought all through training camp we had all this talent, and we can't even beat the Jets at home"? It's going to be really important. This is what I talked about a little bit on the last podcast. For this young team to understand that 17 games is a long season. It has got to be 1 week at a time. You start with week 1, you beat the Jets. Then you go to week 2 and you beat the next team on the schedule. And you do that so on and so forth. If this team tries to look too far ahead, whether they get up or not at the beginning of the season, it's going to be danger for them. It's going to be trouble for them. This team has to approach every week, 1 week at a time. I think Matt Rule knows that. Every head coach says that, but the teams that really truthfully embody that mentality, those are the ones that win football games. So I or at least give themselves a really good chance. So this young team, super good, very impressionable. I think it's very important for them to get off to a good start this season, just because I think that's going to be the mindset that they carry probably for that first quarter of the year. And then that first quarter of the year will translate to the next quarter. And that quarter or that first half of this season, that'll be what they identify as a team, because they're young and they don't know who they are. So it's going to be really important for them, as you said, to come out, win those first few games, beat the teams you know you can beat, go 3-0, go 4-0, and then go from there. You know what I mean?
And I think, I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I think one of the most important thing is that you said you can't get ahead of yourself. And the way that this schedule is built out, except for that Week 9 matchup against the New England Patriots, which a lot of the Panthers will be looking towards, that Week 1 game, Sam Darnold and the Jets.
Yeah.
If that was week 3, week 4, I think he's looking ahead. I think he's wanting to,
to go out and prove himself.
Be overamped and say, hey, man, we got to start out hot. We got to do this. We got to do this. Stay in your comfort zone. Stay with what you're capable of. Just be yourself. Go out there and win this game. If it was week 2, week 3, he might slip up and get caught looking forward, which we see so often in not only the NFL but in college football. But them being able to say that that's week 1,
Sure.
Get it right off, like just get it off your plate, man. Get this win under your belt against a former team, and it's just a breath of fresh air of saying, hey,
Sure.
you know what? I am capable. It was
Hmm.
partly the organization. Sam Darnold's able
Sure.
to shed that little bit of guilt, little bit of
Yep.
disbelief that he had on him, and roll this Panthers offense into
Sure.
hopefully an incredible season.
It is truthfully unbelievable how big that first game is going to be for this team.
Massive.
Not for the whole team, but just for Sam. And I'll tell you what, Sam going into that game, although it's going to be hard to keep off his mind, he has got to go in there with the mindset of, I'm going to do my job just like I did every single day that I went to practice and every single day that I went out to training camp and put on a practice jersey and went out there and learned this playbook for the first time and started learning these guys and doing my job and figuring out what my role is. Like if he tries to go into that Jets game and pretend to be anybody who he hasn't been in training camp this whole time, he'll fail. He has to go into it playing his role, what he is for this team, which we don't necessarily know yet. It hasn't necessarily been established, but you know that Matt Rule and those guys, they're establishing themselves right now. That's what training camp is. And so he's figuring out, what he needs to do, how he can establish consistency within his play for this team. And so if he steps out on the field against the Jets and tries to do anything besides that, I think he's going to have a tough time. He needs to go into that game knowing he's got the home crowd behind him. He's got his new teammates behind him. He's got his coaches behind him. So all he's got to do is go out there and do his job. And if he does that, he's going to get a win against his former team. He doesn't need to try to do too much on that week one matchup.
Yeah, you got a defense that's going to be able to carry you. Hopefully, you have an offensive line that's good enough to slow down Robert Saleh's defense, which we know that defensive line is going to be, no matter who you put there, he's going to be able to coach those guys up and get every ounce of energy out of them. But two other things that I brought up, and I do want to kind of curveball this into a question before we open it up, because I know you have some things that you want to talk about, so we can keep this show rolling today. Christian McCaffrey, what's more likely? Okay. Is it possible that he is in the MVP discussion once again, which he's always going to be because we know that he is used and abused out of the backfield. He's going to get the touches, he's going to get the yardage, and he's going to get the red zone looks. That's just how he's used. What's more likely for him? MVP candidacy, or do you think it's possible for that comeback player of the year?
I'm going to have to say comeback player of the year just off of first instinct. I feel like if this team is as good as, you advertise, and maybe we know that they can be if they play to full potential, I don't think there's any reason he can't be in that conversation again. Like you said, he already was once. The thing about that season that was interesting is he had no help. I mean, there was it was just him doing most of the work every single down. He was getting so many touches every game that his numbers were unbelievable. And I'm not saying that they can't be fantastic again. I mean, we saw him in 3 games last year. He scored 6 touchdowns. So for him to say that he's not expected to be like that and get his touches and get his is ridiculous. He's going to. The thing with him is that I think Matt Rule has a plan for him. They signed this guy long term. They know he's special. He's more than a running back. Mm-hmm. People used to say he's less than a running back because he's a pass catcher and he can't run between the tackles. No, I'd argue the opposite. He can run between the tackles. They choose not to do that as much as they can because they want to make this guy last and they want to use his talent where it really can shine. And outside the flat and out in the open field is where he shines. So to say that he can't run through the tackles is absurd. We've seen him do it. I mean, he can run through anybody when given the opportunity. But they want to use him where he shines. And so I think what Matt Rule is going to do with this guy is I don't think they want Christian McCaffrey solo carrying the ball 20-plus times a game, right? I think they're going to try to be creative with his touches. They want the ball in his hands 20 to 25 times a game. But how are they going to do it? It's not going to be 20 carries up the middle. And it's never necessarily been that way. But I think you're going to see him flexed around so much this season in motion, in the slot. Like, I don't think that Christian McCaffrey is just going to be your, typical lineup in the backfield guy this year. And I hope that Matt Rule and Joe Brady are smart enough to recognize that this guy can be used all over the field. And I think he will be. So because of that, I think that, they're going to try to have his longevity in mind. I think, there are going to be guys who maybe put up bigger numbers than him this season, not even necessarily at the running back position, but just, quarterbacks are always in the spotlight. I think to wedge your way in there as a running back's hard. I don't think he's going to get the same amount of volume with the football as he did the year he was an MVP consideration. But I absolutely agree with you that, for missing almost an entire year, for having, back-to-back injuries in a season to if he comes back and is the best running back in the league far and out and cleared everybody,
Good.
there's absolutely no reason he shouldn't be comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and I think he's a no-brainer early favorite to be comeback player of the year. I would love to see him be back in the MVP discussion.
One other name I'd throw out there is, and potentially this is a bad prediction from some rumors that have been stirring around today and yesterday, but Joe Burrow would be my obvious clear and away choice for comeback player of the year if he's able to live up to that. Now, I don't know if you've been reading into this much, but the early word around camp is a little sad out of Cincinnati. It sounds like Joe's having a really hard time readjusting to the game, getting his confidence back to the level where he's competing like he was at LSU. And that's just unfortunate, man. It sucks to see guys who earned every bit of the position that they have to suffer because of something like that happens to them. Yeah. And then I've been calling out the Cincinnati Bengals for this all day, so I kind of want to do it on the podcast formally, but I think it is going to haunt that franchise for a really long time that they passed on Penei Sewell to go draft Jamar Chase. I think drafting Jamar Chase was the fun choice. It was the exciting choice. Yeah. It was the choice that the fans were going to like the most in terms of, the glitz, because you're pairing up a guy, Joe Burrow, with his guy, Jamar Chase. That they might have been one of the greatest quarterback receiver duos in the history of college football. So you think it's a no-brainer. The guy's sitting there. He's the top receiver prospect. Of course we're going to draft him. But if you think about that Bengals receiving room, at the time they still had A.J. Green. They had Tyler Boyd, who's blossoming into a really nice young target. Mm-hmm. They have T. Higgins, who they haven't even really gotten the ball enough yet to see what his full potential is. He's dealt with a couple injuries too. They have a pretty deep receiving room already. Their biggest need and biggest concern going into last season and this season is offensive line. And your quarterback last year takes a hit like that, where he honestly was running around every game. I don't know how much you watch the Bengals. I feel like a lot of people don't have them on their radar. I watched a lot of football. This guy is running for his life every play. He was last year every time that he was in the game. It wasn't his fault. He didn't get to really put up the numbers that I think he could have because of his offensive line. And so he breaks his leg the way he does in the manner that he does with how emotional that whole thing, unfolded for everybody. You have the chance to draft the best offensive line prospect in the draft, maybe the best offensive line prospect. A lot of people felt like in the last 2, 3, maybe even like 4 to 5 years, like this guy's special. I think the Lions got one of the best offensive line prospects I've seen out of college in a while. And the Bengals passed on him when they have a quarterback like that who just broke his freaking leg and now doesn't feel safe in the pocket. He can't establish himself in camp because he doesn't feel safe still. And you had a chance to take a guy like Penei Sewell. I think the Bengals made one of the biggest decisions in the draft that I've seen in a really long time. And I think people are going to notice this season when Joe Burrow is scared and is just chucking the ball out of bounds.
Yeah, I mean, the necessity to have confidence back there in the pocket that I can stand here and deliver this ball on target without worrying about being hit from the backside, which, as Carolina Panthers fans, we know that left tackle has always been a problem for us over the last, 10 years, it feels like, ever since Jordan Gross left. The confidence that has to be exuded by the quarterback to stand there, stand tall, and deliver the football is something that Joe Burrow, I almost call him Joe Brady, Joe Burrow cannot do. And the failure to go after Penei Sewell and go after, like you said, Jamar Chase, I 100% agree. I think that's going to haunt that organization for a long, long time.
And that's absolutely not a stab at Jamar Chase. You might find out Jamar Chase is a fabulous receiver. He might go on being a great receiver for the Bengals, and everyone goes, look, Jamar Chase, he was a great pick. But I guarantee you Penei Sewell has a similarly successful career. And you may look at Joe Burrow's career and say it suffered because he, like you said, he's having struggles at this point, hanging in the pocket. Mm-hmm. I wonder why. You know what I mean? It's sad. I didn't mean to take it on a Bengals tangent, but this is
wherever you want to go.
As much as it's all access for Charlotte, I bring in stuff around the league when it's on our mind.
It's very relevant because what they have going on there, when we as Carolina Panthers fans wanted an offensive lineman taken, we also were looking at a quarterback and
sure.
To kind of just turn it a little bit, the same comparison that's going to be made between Sewell and Jamar Chase is also going to be made here locally with J.C. Horn and Justin Fields, who has looked very, very good in his camp. So over the next 3 to 5 seasons, even this year, people are going to be looking at those under a microscope as here's what my team could have taken. Here's what the team could have taken.
Sure.
Here's what other
Sure.
people wanted us to do and failed to do. But we're already 30 minutes in. I know you had some things that you want to talk about. So
Sure.
let's hear it, man. What's burning on your plate right now?
So what's burning on my plate right now is I just kind of wanted to have a discussion with you about this in general. And at this point, if there's some fans checking us out in the chat, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely.
And just, how you feel about it. But recently, and this isn't even Charlotte sports necessarily in particular, but everybody now is kicking up their fantasy football leagues, right? People are getting set. We're getting our drafts set. They're getting your leagues together. Are you a big fantasy guy, Bradley? Are you a fantasy fantasy man?
Well, listen, we need to have a whole episode on fantasy football. If you're down to do that, I am down.
Sure.
But
yeah, maybe this Sunday we plan on doing that.
I am down. If the chat will come join us, I will be glad to be here for that. I'm
not
huge
doing
fantasy
a fantasy football episode if we can't. I want chat. We got to get y'all in the chat talking to us because I love talking fantasy football with people, especially you guys. So,
I love.
Sorry, but continue. You are a big fantasy guy. Then,
I don't like when people play like 5 or 6 teams because then you're literally just cheering for everyone. But I'm a huge fantasy football guy. I have the same people in the league that we've had for years.
Cool, great. So me too. I've been playing in a league with the same majority of friends for a while now, and I got invited actually into a different league over at work. It is now my second league with some guys who. I had never personally done this. I'd heard of it before. I'm sure many of you have. A dynasty fantasy football league.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, so I got invited into my first dynasty league as an expansion team. This is an existing league with some guys at work. And so they did an expansion draft. They had their rookie draft. I actually traded my first-round pick next year to go into that draft that they had this offseason. And I went up to pick 5. He was still available, so I made the trade, and I took Zach Wilson. We can have a whole other discussion on him. I think he's having a fabulous camp.
That's a great choice.
I'm really excited. But it got me thinking, man, that whole thing had me really excited. I traded a future pick for a guy to go get him now, a young quarterback to establish my team. Fantasy is a fun little experience because it makes you invested more on Sundays, because you're looking at all these different players on all these different teams. So now suddenly you have stake in every single game that's going on. Yeah. But B, you get the chance to run your own little team. You don't have to say, why did my team take that guy? He's not any good. Or why didn't my team go get him? Because I love that guy. You don't have to do that anymore. You can do it yourself because you get to run your team, right? So when you do it year to year and you draft every season, the stakes are so much less. And so I got put onto this dynasty fantasy thing, man, and it has had me buzzing. I love it. And so I transitioned our league that I've run with my friends for a long time into a dynasty format this year. We just got on. We're actually using the Sleeper app, which is amazing. I don't know if you've used Sleeper for fantasy before, but
not an endorsement. Could be.
It is so not an endorsement. Could be. It is so easy to use though, for real, and it lets you customize the whole league out. It's super cool. So I hopped on there. I've talked to the guys. We built out this league. And we're really getting it set, man, and I'm absolutely buzzed for it. And I just wanted to ask you, your thoughts. Do you think that, A, you're seeing a trend maybe to this shift to dynasty format? And B, what are your general thoughts? Is it fun because you get to think over time? Does it kill the vibe because you're rooting for the same guys every year? How do you feel about it?
So a couple of things. Number one, I think my league is actually transitioning to a dynasty league this year. So we're in the process of going through that because about half of
the trend is there, right?
Yeah, the trend is absolutely there. I think more people are starting to understand it because of the point that I just made is you want to be invested in it, but people that are playing 6 or 7 leagues, that was a popular thing, I think, a few years ago. People were just yeah, man, I'm in 15 leagues. And it's why?
Why? Yeah.
But I think, like you said, the ability to go from armchair GM to an actual GM where you're making conscious
trading
decisions,
draft picks and thinking ahead, taking young players versus vets who are going to be good. You got to take risks.
Exactly.
Maybe you don't. Maybe there's win now moves. There's win later moves. It suddenly unlocks this door for fantasy football that has not existed, at least in my experience with it before. I don't know how. I mean, I feel like some people have been doing this for a really long time, and I've just been kind of blind to the whole thing. But I feel like the trend is establishing. I'm hearing it more and more.
Yeah.
And dude, it is like the best thing. It's like consuming me a little bit. It's hilarious.
I like it a lot because as well as playing through the season, there's still reason to trade. There's still reason to come back. There's still reason to make changes and make trades.
When your team sucks, you still care.
Yeah, you can still make changes because you're planning for the upcoming season. So last year I was going into playoffs were 1 week away, and the team that was in last place was like, hey, I just want to be competitive over the last 4 weeks. I'll give you my best running back for basically your bench because my team had stayed extremely healthy and his was very injured. Everyone vetoed the trade. They're like, it doesn't make any sense for the person that's in second place to get even better when he doesn't need it. It's not going to help this guy. He's not going to make the playoffs. It's like, okay, I get it. Veto the trade. Well, now it's like, hey, he's looking out for his future. He's willing to give up, Ezekiel Elliott for these 2 rookie wide receivers and Kyle Pitts that he has coming in here because those guys could pay off in the long run. So I think it just gives it a year's worth of interest from everyone that's playing.
Sure.
Instead of just like, hey, after the first 5 games, you kind of know who's the upper echelon
who's where.
and who's where.
Right.
So,
And you're not going to trade your best players because you want to win that season. I'll tell you what else will happen now. People will trade good players. They won't be afraid to hold on to them like this. You know why? Because if I've got a guy putting up 20 points a game, but he's 32 years old and I know that his NFL career isn't necessarily going to last that much longer, I might go sell now. That's sell now mode. I'm going to go get my young guys who I know can win for me for 5 years. You see what I'm saying? There is so much more to think about now. And to me, if some people go, screw that, I just want to draft my players and watch. That's cool. That's cool. They still have normal fantasy for you. But for me, man, a student of this game, like somebody who really wishes, honestly, that at some level they were up in the front office doing stuff like this, I feel like I kind of get the chance to now, and it's a lot of fun. And you get to do it with all your buddies, which makes it even better. You can, talk crap to each other and stuff. I have fully invested into this dynasty format. I'm all in mode. So honestly, man, I'd love to. Sunday, let's talk about it. Let's get into it a little bit more.
I'm 100% down. So if you're here in the chat, you're here watching a replay wherever you are, join us on Sunday. We'll talk about fantasy football. I think the biggest thing for me, if you've been coming to this channel for a while, even when it was Double E Sports, you know that my passion was always DraftKings. It was DFS, and that was kind of my week to week fantasy football talk. Like that's week to week. What's the best for me this week? Dynasty football triggers something else. Some other brain crack addict in me is like Dynasty is thinking out long term, and I love that aspect about it. So yeah, I'm all on board for Dynasty football to be the new thing. I think everyone should be taking it up for sure. But closing thoughts, closing remarks. I know we got to get out of here so we can get on with our life. We'll be back Sunday night, 8 o'clock as always. So Gray, do you have anything else that you want to close up with?
Man, I just always appreciate the talk, man. Absolutely. I will say, for those of you watching, I'm a little disappointed I didn't see too much in the comments tonight. So be ready on Sunday. I say this on Twitter. I say this anytime that I post about this podcast. My favorite thing is when people reciprocate in the chat about the conversation, and it really does make it cool for us because we get to talk about what we know you guys want us to hear, or what you want to hear from us rather. So we love just spitfiring at you what we want to talk about, but I prefer to talk about what you guys want. So please hop in the chat, tell us what you want. This Sunday, think about questions you have about your fantasy team. Drop the questions in the chat. Listen, this is not like a bragging point. People come to me for fantasy advice every single year. I love talking about it. I watch tons of football just like all of you, but I love paying attention to fantasy. And so I've got a lot of people who call me up on their draft day. They say, hey, I'm sitting here at this pick. I've got these guys who are on my mind. What do you think?
Love it.
So I want to help you guys or hear your thoughts from me. I might have some questions. Hop in our freaking chat on Sunday. Anything you ask, I'll be prepared to talk about it with everybody. So I'm excited for Sunday. Be in the chat.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Sleeper Studs and Stacks, where we talk about fantasy football and DraftKings lineups, I will always say, and I'll reiterate what Gray just said, I'm not afraid to be told that I'm wrong. Tell me where I messed up. Tell me what you don't agree with.
Absolutely.
And I would love to talk it out with you because that's what it's about, man. Just talking and having open communication and dialogue about sports because nothing brings us together like sports. But that's going to do it for this episode. Again, Sunday night, join us for another episode of the All Access podcast where we're going to be talking about fantasy football. We'll get you caught up on all the Charlotte sports, but it looks like fantasy football. We'll talk about some of the players in the Carolinas that you need to focus on the most and just some other general knowledge. Sounds good. Gray, Thank you so much for being able to join us tonight, guys. Have a good one. Make sure you catch